Welcome back, America. Election day is right around the corner. No, not the 2024 one. We still got to get 2023 out of the way. And then that happens next week, next Tuesday. And there are some very key races, including the Kentucky governor's race, Virginia legislature race. More importantly, Republicans are testing a lot of the new strategies that they have been putting, the blocking and tackling, particularly of early voting. We've got a perfect guest to bring us through that. Drew McKissick is the South Carolina Republican State Party Chairman, as well as the co-chairman of the Republican National Committee, and he joins us right now. Mr. Chairman, great to have you on the show.
And happy to be here.
Sir, a lot of big races up next week, a lot of ground game. We see it just in our ground reporting, a lot of hard work by the Republicans. What do you expect to see next week?
I mean, look, we got a lot of great candidates on the ballot, from Mississippi to Kentucky to Virginia, New Jersey. And, you know, we're looking not only to win campaigns, which is the whole purpose of our party, but to use this as an opportunity to test drive, if you will, a lot of the things that we're focusing on potentially rolling out next year. Specifically our Bank Your Vote program, where we focus on early voting, getting more Republicans who maybe have been, hesitant to vote early, who are, election day Republicans, as we like to call them, to get them used to voting early, getting their vote in the bank, so that if they have an emergency or a flat tire or something like that, or the weather's bad on election day, that their votes are already in the bank. Plus, it gives us more time to focus on what we call low propensity Republicans. There are certain people who are going to crawl across broken glass to go vote on election day, which is great. But we have other people that, if they vote, they'll vote Republican, but you have to poke them with a sharp stick a few times to get them to do it. Well, that's what this allows us to do.
Yeah, that's great.
I love that. And I think that the Bank Your Vote initiative is very smart, and any type of early voting measures, but there is still the election integrity issue looming large. And I speak to hundreds of Republican voters across America who say to themselves, they're mostly Trump supporters, and they say, I have no doubt in my mind that next November, Donald Trump is going to win the election. I have a lot of doubt that he is going to be declared the winner due to a lot of these issues that we saw in 2020. We saw them still in 2022, and they're worried we're going to see them in 2024.
Well, look, what happened in the last, you say 2020, and in some cases in 2022, in any election, depends on where you're standing when you ask that question. So, for instance, in 2020, you saw some places where it's all mail-in balloting, or where you have drop boxes or whatever. You saw Democrats use COVID as an excuse to try to change election law all across the country. They brought those lawsuits actually to South Carolina. They had what I refer to as the buffet table of how to make fraud easier, was basically what they wanted in their lawsuit. We took them all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in South Carolina, and we beat them. We were the first state to beat them and clear the table with everything that they had tried to do, stop them cold in South Carolina. Every state wasn't so lucky. In some states, we have, a problem of legislative control, where we can't get something, get Democrats to get on board with fixing a system or going back to something that Americans were essentially used to. In other places, you had judges who intervened. In other places, it was bureaucrats who got involved. So it promotes a multi-part strategy. Number one, where we've been able to make legislative changes in states, we've done that. We focused on that, from Georgia to even South Carolina. We didn't have problems, and we even made our election laws tighter a little over a year ago. Other Republican states have done the same thing. In other places, it involves being in lawsuits. The RNC right now, by itself, is currently involved in over 50 lawsuits around the country, seeking to do just that, to make our elections more secure. And that's on top of what other conservative grassroots organizations are doing. And then in addition to that, you have, what do we need to do if we can't make changes in court, we can't make changes in the legislature? What do we need to do to be better at the rules of the game in that particular state to make sure that we win? Because losers don't make policy. You got to win in order to govern. That's our job as a party, is to win. So in places where you have all mail-in balloting, how can we be better at that than they are? In places where we have drop boxes and so forth, how can we do that better than they? That's what we've been focusing on. And that's one of the things that the Bank Your Vote program is so important to as a foundation, because no matter what the rules are in these various states, we want to get as many people voting early as possible. So when people go to that website, bankyourvote.com, which, by the way, can be and will be private labeled by every campaign around the country, every statewide race, every state Republican Party, with their own rhetoric and their own face, if you will, all feeding into a central database, which will let us know, one, that you want to vote early, and based on what state you're in, It's going to let you know what the rules are and when, where, and how to vote early in that state. And then every campaign working in that state will know that you want to vote early and can pester you until you do. That's fundamental to what we're going to do next year, and we're test driving a lot of that right now.
That's absolutely amazing. And one of the fundamentals of elections, you do all your ground game, you do all your work, you get great candidates, you raise a lot of money, but then sometimes the other side helps you out a little bit. And I'm just wondering right now, as you look at, you've been in this a long time, Drew, you have a president whose party can't even condemn Hamas completely, can't fully embrace Israel, wants to spend more money and bring inflation up, and wants to double down on Bidenomics when nobody thinks Bidenomics is working. How good is the Democratic strategy for Republicans right now?
Well, I mean, you can look back over the past several years. I mean, I look at South Carolina as a benchmark. For years people have thought of South Carolina as a conservative state. I would say or a red state, and I would say rightly so. We voted for every Republican since Eisenhower, except for the mistake with that guy from Georgia back in 1976. But at the local level, that was not true. People would vote Republican at the presidential level, and somewhere down the line they would split their ticket. And it depended on what part of the state you were in. And our state has been in a continual political evolution, if you will. But what has happened is the line where people were splitting that ticket kept getting lower and lower and lower. And the more campaigns and issues became nationalized, the more you saw that line start to move faster. We still have straight ticket voting in South Carolina, for instance. And the first time in history that we actually beat Democrats on straight ticket voting in South Carolina was just 7 years ago. We beat them by 2 points. In 18, we beat them by 8 points. In 20, we beat them by 17. In 22, we beat them by 27 points statewide. Because the bottom is dropping out among that local support for Democrats in South Carolina, and I would say in a lot of other places around the country, and a lot of it's driven by, I think, national issues and the way the National Democratic Party is moving further and faster to the left.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I think another thing, and we only got about 20 seconds left, but the way South Carolina has built its economy, you have all these economic refugees coming from all over the rest of the country that are fleeing the Democratic policies. You really have a successful story.
Tax refugees, bring them.
Exactly. We have one in California. We might be able to lure to the Carolina there. How about that? Mr. Chairman, it is always an honor. You always give us a great update. We always feel a lot smarter after you're on the show. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great day. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, an amazing new product for those of us who are big Second Amendment fans who also want to be safe owners of guns. Muzzle Stick has created an incredible product that allows you to put a little flag that tells you the status of your gun when you store it. That's a great safety idea. We're all great champions of the Second Amendment. We're also great champions of safety. We're going to bring you that product in just a few seconds right after these messages.